Children, today we'll start with the first chapter of your geography lesson, standard 9th, India, size and location. But before I begin the chapter, let us revise latitudes and longitudes. Okay, let us revise what are they, because this you have learned in class 6th, and you may have forgotten certain important facts about latitudes and longitudes. So let us first revise before I begin with this chapter, India, size and location. Okay children, this is our earth, and you know our earth is geoid in shape. Now what is geoid? It means that it is slightly flattened at the poles and there is a bulge at the center near the equator. Now, to know the location of any place, what do we do these days? If we have to go somewhere, we do not know the location. What do? We use GPS. Now, how does the GPS locate places? Yes, in order to locate places and know the time of a place, we need to draw imaginary lines on the globe. Okay, so what are these imaginary lines? So let us understand this. Children, we draw two imaginary lines on the globe. They are lines of latitude, also called parallels of latitude, and we draw lines of longitude, also called as meridians. Okay, so now let us understand what are latitudes. So latitudes, let's look into it. They are the lines which run east to west, and these lines measure distances in degrees, and they keep decreasing in size as we move away from the equator, and at the poles they're just a point. They're parallel lines, so they never meet. And in total there are 180 lines, 90 in the north of the equator and 90 lines in the south of the equator. Now let us look at this figure. You can see here, so we start counting these lines from here. So equator is 0 degrees, and as we move above the equator we start counting 1 2 3, and finally at the pole, north pole, which is it's just a point, it is 90 degrees. So 1 degree north, 2 degree north, and finally 90 degree north. So whatever is above the equator is considered north, and below the equator we start counting from 0 again, 1 2 3, and then when you reach the south pole it is 90 degrees. Okay, and as I told you, these lines, you can see this is the biggest circle. Equator is the biggest circle dividing the earth into northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. So above the equator is northern hemisphere and below the equator is southern hemisphere. Okay, and you can see the lines, the circular lines are getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Finally at the poles is just a point. So total there are 180 lines. You can see 90 in the north and 90 in the south. So if we add them together, 90 plus 90, there are 180 lines of latitude. Children, the other line that we draw on the globe are called as longitudes or meridians. Now what are they? They are semicircular lines running from North Pole to South Pole. Okay, as I told you, they are also called as meridians, and prime meridian, which passes through Greenwich near London, divides the earth into two equal halves, east and west hemisphere, and it is numbered. Prime meridian starting number is 0. All the lines are of the same length, and they are total 360 in number. 180 lines in the east of prime meridian and 180 lines in the west of the prime meridian. Now let us look at this figure. You can see here they are semicircular lines running from North Pole to South Pole. North Pole to South Pole, and the starting point is here 0 degree, which is called the prime meridian. And where does it pass through? You can see London is here, passing through near London. This point they have started as a starting point, which is numbered 0. Okay, and because it is running 0, it is dividing the earth. Right side is east and left side is west. It is dividing the earth into two hemispheres, eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. Okay, so we start from here 0, then 1 degree, 2 degree east. Okay, we go up to 180 this side, and starting from 0 we go up 1 degree, 2 degree till 180 in the west. Okay, so these are called longitudes or meridians. Understood? So children, here you can see this is the prime meridian. You can see 0 degree, and they are counted in the multiples of 15. You can see 0 degrees 15 towards the east. Yes, it's given east here, and then you can see here starting 0 towards the west. So total there are 360 lines, 180 in the east and 180 in the west. And this prime meridian you can see is a 0 degree meridian. Okay, the starting point is prime meridian. What was the starting point for latitude? It was the equator. Starting is 0 degrees. Okay, now here you can see here the meridian 0 degree right from here to here, and equator. Okay, so now finally, what are latitudes? You can call them, they are sleeping lines, and what are longitudes? They are standing lines. This is how you have to remember them. Now children, by combining latitude and longitudes, what is formed? A series of small squares are formed, which are called as grid. Now you can see like a grid, when you open up, it looks like an Excel sheet. So you can see here, this black line is 0. Towards the front you can see the prime meridian, and because it is semicircle, the other side is 180 degrees. Okay, so when we open this up, it looks like a grid, just like your Excel sheet. Now this is how these lines look on the map. You can see these are standing lines are longitude and sleeping lines are latitude. Now with the help of this grid, we can find any place in this world, and that is what the GPS system also uses, by the help of these latitudes and longitudinal lines. So you children, you see the equator divides the earth into two equal halves. We have the northern hemisphere. Above the equator is northern hemisphere, below the equator is the southern hemisphere. And what does the prime meridian do? It divides the earth into eastern hemisphere. Right side is eastern hemisphere and left side is western hemisphere. Okay, so what are hemisphere? They are equal halves. So by using equator and prime meridian, we can divide the world into 4 hemispheres: north, south, east and west. Okay children, now let us see, where does India lie in the world map? Which hemisphere? Okay, so you can see here the equator, yes, which is passing through the world. And so where does India lie? You can see this is India, and it is totally in the northern hemisphere. So what is equator? What kind of lines? They are latitudinal lines. I told you, sleeping lines. Okay, so you can see India in the northern hemisphere. It is above the equator is northern hemisphere. We are totally in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so you must remember this. Now children, have a look at this map. So you can see the equator, which divides the earth into northern and southern hemisphere, and I've told you we are in the northern hemisphere. And now you see the prime meridian. This is the prime meridian starting 0 degrees, so which divides the earth into eastern. This right side is eastern and left side is western. So we are where? We are east of the prime meridian. Okay, so now from 0, 1, 2, 3 we start counting. So if we go towards the right side, we are in the eastern hemisphere, eastern and northern hemisphere. We are somewhere here. Okay, so we'll start from the equator as 0. We go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 above that, and from here we start counting from 0. The prime meridian, you can see this is 0 degree, and then we start counting 1, 2, 3, 4. But must remember that the parallel lines, that is the latitudes, are the degrees are north and south, and the longitudinal lines are in the directions are east and west, and both are measured in degrees. Okay, so children, let us have a look at the latitudinal extent of India. You can see latitudinal extent of India is 8 degree and 4 minutes north to 37 degree 6 minutes north. Now what are these minutes? Now in between I'll show you here how did we get that. So look at this picture. You can see here, this is the equator. Can you see the equator? starting is 0 degree, and then we start counting 1 2 3, and India is somewhere here. Okay, so from here till we end till there, we count the latitudinal extent. So what is the latitudinal extent? I've told you it is 8 degree 4 minutes north. Why? Because we are in the northern hemisphere. Okay, and 37 degree 6 minute north. Okay, so now look at this. You can understand 8 degree to 37 degree, and what are minutes? So it is, suppose it's 0, then go to the next is will be 1. In between, like you go from in centimeters, in between there are lines and millimeter lines. So similarly there are lines in between before we go to 1 degree. So if it is not within that, we count it as minutes. They counted as minutes. Like we say millimeters, they counted as minute in between lines. So you must remember the latitudinal extent is 8 degree 4 minute north to 37 degree 6 minute north. Why north? Because we are in the northern hemisphere. Okay, the equator is dividing the earth into northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, and we are in the northern hemisphere. Okay. Children, now let us look at the longitudinal extent of India. It is 68 degrees 7 minutes east to 97 degree 25 minutes east. Now how did we get this? Let us see again here. You can see this is the prime meridian. Can you see here? This is the prime meridian starting 0 degree, and from here we start counting. We come to India, then we count this line. So this is 68 till we go ahead. This is 97. So you must remember the longitudinal extent, the standing lines we call it. Okay. So what is the longitudinal extent? 68 degrees 7 minutes east, 97 degrees 25 minutes east. Why east? Because we are in the prime meridian is dividing the earth into eastern and western hemisphere, and we are in the north eastern part of the world. You can see towards the right side is all east. Okay, understood? So these are the two important. You must remember the latitudinal extent, 4 degrees 8 degrees 4 minutes north to 37 degrees 6 minutes north is the latitudinal extent, and then here is the longitudinal extent, which is 68 degrees 7 minutes east to 97 degrees 25 minutes east.